I'm not even going to tell you what happened in the 9 o'clock service. It was an adventure. But hey, you know what? Perspective is key. If this is the worst thing that happens today, it's still going to be a great day. Perspective is key. Like, let me ask you something. Have you ever looked at something only later to realize that what you were looking at, you were completely wrong about what it was because your perspective was off? Now, the direct way to ask that question is, have you ever had the wrong perspective about something? And the answer is yes, for all of us. And if you're saying no right now, then your perspective about yourself is off. Like, we've all had the wrong perspective about something before. It's really easy to do. Let me give you an example. Take a look at this picture. Now, if you're looking at this shape and you're looking to the right, what shape are you going to see on the right? What shape? Okay, this is basic geometry, or whatever figures are called. That's a circle right on the right. Now, if you look at it from the left, if you're looking at the left, what are you going to see? A square, for the 4 people that can recognize a square. Thank you, right? Now, if you look at it from the right, of course this is a circle. What else would it be? And if you're looking at the left, there couldn't be anything other than a square. It's obvious. But if you change your perspective, and in this case you look at it straight on, you're going to see that this figure is not a circle and it's not a square. It's a what? It's a cylinder. Now here's my point. Sometimes if you want to see what's real, you got to change your perspective. It's very easy for any of us to have the wrong perspective on a number of different things, and it gets even worse when you add pressure to the situation. Now, we've talked about pressure for the last 2 weeks, pressure in the world and pressure in our own individual lives that keeps getting piled on top of you more and more, just like water pressure increases every 33 feet that you go. That could be trouble in your family, or it could be stress at work. It could be some kind of persecution or bad diagnosis or discouragement or wondering what's going to happen next in the world and why does it seem like it keeps getting darker and darker and darker. The list goes on and on and on about the things that we face in our life, the pressure that we go under. And when that happens, it tends to skew our perspective. And then when your perspective gets skewed, it just adds more discouragement, more uncertainty to your life. Nothing good happens. A skewed perspective is never helpful. It always ends up being harmful or some way or another. This is where our guy Paul, he shifts gears. This guy named Paul, he's writing this letter to a group of Christians in Corinth. That was a city in ancient Greece. And he's writing them a letter because they're struggling on all different levels. I mean, they're facing criticism. They're being canceled. They're being attacked because of their faith in Jesus. And now they're starting to make some pretty dumb decisions because of the pressure that they're facing. So Paul writes them a letter and he says, guys, I can relate to you. I'm under constant danger of death because I serve Jesus. And then he starts saying, hey, I can empathize with the stuff that you're suffering through. Man, I have been beaten. I've been thrown in worse prisons than Shawshank. I've been whipped 5 different times to within an inch of my life. I've been pelted with rocks to the point of death. Oh, and by the way, don't forget this. I've been shipwrecked multiple times. Once I was just clinging to driftwood for 36 hours in the middle of the sea, wondering what's going to happen first. Am I going to get picked up by another boat? Am I going to wash up on some beach? Or am I going to be eaten by sharks? Which is going to happen first? And Paul went through some stuff. It was hard. And it wasn't just because he had faith in Jesus. It's because he lived out his faith on mission. A real life, a real faith in Jesus always results in a life that looks like Jesus. And Jesus was about everybody else. How can I serve everybody else? He never was about himself being served regardless of the cost. Paul was all about other people because he wanted as many people as possible to receive the treasure that is the gospel. We done on that last week. So he writes, hey, all of this stuff is for your benefit. The beatings, the shipwreck, the persecution, the murder attempts, all of it is for your benefit. And as God's grace reaches more and more people, there's going to be more and great thanksgiving. And God will receive more and more glory. The gospel is all about more. It's all about more. We as a church, we're about more. More people receiving God's grace. More people living in God's grace. More people growing in God's grace. More thanksgiving comes from that. We want to be thankful for as many things as we possibly can. That's why we get so excited when we see people experience the gift that baptism is. We get excited and thankful when we see people taking next steps, whatever that next step might be for them. Maybe it's serving inside the church and outside of the church in a way that they never have before. Or they're starting to look a little bit more like Jesus. Or all the spiritual fruit, peace, joy, love, patience, kindness, it just kind of manifests itself in their lives. We get more and more thankful for those things because that means God's glory is being multiplied. And when God's glory is multiplied, the more and more people that see it, we get thankful for that because that shows the light does win out over the darkness. There's plenty of darkness in the world. Whenever God's grace is multiplied, we get thankful because it shows the light wins. It validates our hope. So Paul says, because of that, we never give up. And we're just not going to give up. We're never going to stop trying to reach people. We're never going to stop trying to serve people. We're never going to stop trying to tell people the truth. We're never going to stop trying to help people grow. No matter what happens, we're not going to give up, even though it feels like the world is constantly attacking the truth of God's word. Constantly attacking the truth of the gospel. We're not going to give up because that means grace is being multiplied to more people, so it's worth it. We're not going to give up even if we're in danger of losing a relationship or being criticized or canceled or even attacked because we love and follow Jesus, because that means God's glory is being multiplied. It's worth it. And if you want more courage, that's what encouragement is. Like if you're encouraging somebody, you're giving them some of your courage and telling them, hey, keep going, don't give up. If you want more encouragement, if you want more courage, put yourself in a position where you're seeing gospel multiplication happen. Like the more you see God moving and working, the more you're a part of it yourself, the more encouragement you're gonna receive and the more pressure you're gonna be able to endure when you're under it. That's why I've been telling you things the last couple of weeks about how we have more and more people coming on a monthly basis here, but the consistent story that I hear often for the last 8 months is, hey, we're new to LifeBridge and we've never been to a church in our lives. This is the first time we've ever been to a church. That's awesome. And if that's you, you are more than welcome here. We're excited that you're here. That's why I told you last week that we're on pace right now to have more baptisms this year than we have in the last 5. Maybe even farther back than that. I didn't look farther back. We get excited when we see people stepping up and serving in the church and outside the church in new ways. I was talking to a guy named Zach this morning. He's leading on our guest experience team, and he's just doing such an amazing job. I hear his name brought up more and more from people around how they want to be around Zach, how Zach takes care of them, how Zach leads them well. Zach started coming in October for the first time. It's awesome. Or I heard about a group this past week, a small group that saw a need in our community and just went out and took care of it as a group. That's awesome. I tell you those things to encourage you and for you to be a part of it. Because if you're not in a position where you're seeing gospel multiplication, if you're not in a position where you're seeing God's Spirit move in the church and you're not a part of it, then you're gonna get discouraged. And you're probably gonna give up. I think this is one of the biggest reasons why people walk away from the church across the United States. It's not because they were hurt by the church. That happens. And I've been hurt by the church. It's because the church is made up of broken human beings like me. And it's not because they stopped believing in Jesus. I think probably the biggest reason why people walk away from the church is because they weren't a part of the movement. They weren't a part of God multiplying. They never saw it happen. So they just eventually gave up. That's why I'm always pleading with you. Be a contributor, not a consumer. Because if you're contributing to where God's Spirit is moving in the church and outside in the community, that's gonna bring you so much more encouragement. That will do not only great things for other people, but that will do far more things for you as an individual than anything you could ever just consume. Like if you are a consumer, if you just consume, meaning the church is meant to serve me, the church is about me, then you're gonna miss what God's doing. But if you're a contributor, and I am the church, how can I give more of me? Then you can't help but seeing God move even if you tried not to. Let me say it this way. If you're focused on you, if it's all about you, if you're focused on you, you'll give up. Eventually you'll give up. It might be next week, it might be 30 years from now, but you'll give up if you're focused on you. If you are focused on everybody but you, then you can't give up even if you wanted to. That was Paul. You heard what that dude was going through, right? Did he not have a reason to give up more than any of us ever have? But he couldn't give up, even if he wanted to. And on top of that, the guy was more joyful than probably all of us combined because he was focused on everybody else. He was focused on more. And then he writes, maybe I think, some of the most hopeful and encouraging words you can read. This is all about the right perspective. He says, that's why we never give up. Though our bodies are dying, our spirits are being renewed every day. For our present troubles are small and they won't last very long. They produce for us a glory that vastly outweighs them and will last forever, not a week, forever. So don't look at the troubles that we can see now. Rather, fix our gaze, fix our eyes on the things that cannot be seen. For the things that we see now will soon be gone, but the things that we cannot see, those things last forever. Small present troubles. Other translations say this light momentary affliction. Now, let me ask you, have you ever had somebody tell you that something that you're going through in your life, a rough season, a storm, something you're dealing with, have you ever had somebody tell you that, hey, it's not that big of a deal? Just deal with it. Stop being dramatic, rub some dirt on it. Has that ever happened to you? Like, that's incredibly frustrating, is it not? When you're struggling with something, when you're going through it, and somebody tells you it's not a big deal, let me give you an example. How about the notorious man flu? You know what I'm talking about? Ladies, get off our case. It is that bad. We are sick. Apparently, you've never dealt with a runny nose and a low-grade fever like this. This is not for the faint of heart, okay? Somewhere my wife is rolling her eyes. She just is. I can feel it. Now, it's never fun if somebody tells you, hey, that whatever you're dealing with, it's not that big of a deal. That's frustrating. You just kind of want to strangle a person like that. But that's not what Paul's talking about. Paul's saying these beatings, false imprisonment, attempted murder, being shipwrecked. He's saying that's the stuff that I went through. It's not that big of a deal. I mean, it sounds like a big deal to me. Maybe I'm just a big wuss. He's saying, no, it's momentary. It's light. It's small. And if you follow Jesus, that's also true for you, no matter what you go through. If you're a follower of Jesus, if you're being criticized, if you're being slandered, if people are gossiping about you, if you get a bad diagnosis, if you have a falling out with someone, if you're feeling discouragement all the time, even if you're persecuted in whatever way, we tend to overuse that word in Western context, but whatever you're going through, it's only temporary. Now, it doesn't mean that it's not hurtful or it's not discouraging. Absolutely, we validate that. But if you feel like it's unbearable or never ending, it's because your perspective is off. But if you have the right perspective, every pressure, all 33 feet of it, all the pain that you experience, it's only temporary. For this light, momentary affliction is preparing for us a weight of glory that goes beyond all comparison. Pain and pressure in life is preparing you. You're being shaped from something for something. Like, well, what is that? Paul says it's glory. So remember this. If you're a follower of Jesus, no matter what storms you go through in life, no matter what obstacles you face, no matter what kind of affliction you suffer, what you have waiting for you is far more glorious, and you can't even compare to it, that you have waiting for you for eternity with Jesus. It's far better. We can't even imagine. There is something called eternal rewards. I think we don't talk about eternal rewards. Maybe we forget about them because we're really not sure what it means, or because we're so focused on making sure that we don't try to earn grace and earn the gospel. Man, so you have been saved by grace through faith, not by good works. That truth is so important. You can't earn God's grace. You can't earn salvation. You can't earn the gospel. You can't earn forgiveness. You can't. Romans 6:23 says, for the wages of sin is death, but, this is the best but you will ever hear, but the free gift of God is eternal life. Religion is you trying to earn that free gift. Being a good person, like whatever that means, that's you trying to earn it. But the truth is, the only way is for you to have faith in Jesus and what he earned for you. That's grace. Grace is a free gift. You cannot earn a gift. It is freely given to you by someone. But you can earn a reward. You can earn a reward. That's what Paul's talking about. He's saying, guys, remember that if you're a follower of Christ, meaning you've put your faith and trust in him as Lord and Savior, you're following him, then you're already secure with Jesus for eternity. Salvation is locked up for you. You've been forgiven. You're already an adopted son or daughter. You've got an inheritance waiting for you. That's done. The Holy Spirit has sealed you. So remember that when the stuff hits the fan in your life. Remember that. But also, he's saying, remember, you got glory coming for you. You got rewards that you're going to enjoy for eternity that you can't even wrap your minds around. Jesus talked about eternal rewards. He did. Matthew 16, verse 27. Jesus said, for the Son of Man is going to come with his angels in the glory of his Father, and he will repay. This is a good repay. He will repay each person according to what he has done. Matthew 19, Jesus says, you will have treasure in heaven. The treasure right now is the gospel. In heaven, it's something we can't even imagine. Luke 14, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the just. You're going to be repaid for something. 1 Corinthians 2, this is one of my favorite verses. You hear me throw this out every time, from time to time. No eye has seen, no ear has heard. No one can imagine what God has prepared for those who love him. You can't even imagine what God has prepared for those who love him. Bottom line, what you have waiting for you for eternity is far greater than anything you will ever experience in this life. God's preparing something for you, and he's preparing you for it. He's preparing you for it. This light momentary affliction is preparing us. It's so key. That perspective is so important. So for somebody who follows Jesus, pressure and pain in this life, it's only preparation. It's all it is, only preparation, nothing else. So the worst thing that can happen to you in this world, the worst thing that could ever happen to you is that you just get prepared more for something that is so much greater than what you're experiencing that your mind can't even comprehend it. That's it. That's the perspective that we're supposed to have. Pressure, pain, problems in life, all they are opportunities. Man, when you suffer, let that remind you how Jesus suffered for you. When you're reminded how he suffered for you, you're reminded how much he loves you. You're reminded that he wants you. When Christ went to the cross, there was no buyer's remorse. He wants you. You're reminded too of how he can relate to what you're going through. Jesus has been through every kind of pain and pressure that we could ever fathom. So now we have a God that completely understands you, can relate to you, can empathize with you. So you can have confidence now and run to him when you need grace and mercy, when you're in need of it. You can go to him. Let every pressure that you face in life, let it also crush your pride. Because all of us wrestle with pride. Every single person wrestles with pride. Like even if you're the one saying, no, I don't wrestle with pride. Everybody's better than me. Woe is me. You're constantly dogging on yourself. That's just reverse pride. Like we all wrestle with pride. And there's two things you can do with pride. That's it. You can either be killing pride in you, or you can let pride be killing you, one or the other. So the pressure you face in life, let that humble you. Because God always responds favorably to humility. So let every 33 feet crush your pride, not your perspective. And let the stuff you go through in life, it's an opportunity for God to demonstrate his power. Storms that you face in life, storms that you're going through, whatever you're suffering from, ask God to flex. Ask him to demonstrate his power. Now, he might not respond in the way that you want him to or in the time frame that you want him to, but be patient and watch for it. And when he does, thank you for it. And I had this happen this morning. 8:45, 15 minutes before the first service. I'm in my office praying, getting ready. I get a knock on my door, and it was somebody coming in to tell me that a big prayer request we had was answered. And in a way I never saw coming. So the last 15 minutes before the first service, I just stayed in my office preparing myself, thanking God. You flexed, God, thank you. You flexed, thank you. Because when you thank God, he's gonna flex more. And when you thank him, it's easier to see him work. And whenever you see him work, it just validates your hope. It's massive encouragement. It's seeing God's Spirit move. Now, I'm ready to go today because of that. Let's go, let's jump into the fire. Not literally, that's bad for this 4th of July. Not literally. But I'm ready to go, man. I'm encouraged by that. God flexed. I got to see it. And most of all, I think this is for me, and you just get to hear this. When you're going through stuff, pressure, pain, problems in life. And let that remind you to have the right perspective. Man, it's so easy to get stuck in this mindset that whatever's happening right now, this is it, it's final. But when you're going through a storm, let that remind you, oh yeah, this is just temporary. And in comparison, it's light. Let me have that perspective that's eternal. Because no matter how long you live, if you live 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 years, it's momentary. I've told you this before, that in over a decade of being a pastor, the oldest person I've done a funeral for is 34 years old. I've done a lot of funerals. This life is momentary. That's why perspective is so important. Because what can happen? I fall into this all the time, and I know you do too. What can happen without even knowing it is that we can take the stuff that we deal with in this life that happened to you yesterday, and we can make it eternal. Oh, this grief that I'm going through, it's never gonna end. Or this anxiety, it's never gonna go away. Or how the world continues to treat the church, it's only gonna get worse, it's never gonna go away. It's so easy to take the temporary in this world and make it eternal. And when you do that, it becomes unbearable. That's why Paul says, don't give up. Like, don't lose your hope. You've got no reason to lose hope if your perspective is right. Don't lose your hope, don't give up. That's why he says this. He says, hey, so we don't look at the troubles that we can see now. Rather, we fix our gaze on the things that cannot be seen. For the things that we see now will soon be gone. Well, what can we see now? We can see brokenness. We can see pain. We can see abuse. We can see sin. We can see injustice. We can see heartache. We can see discouragement. That's what we can see now. So according to this, that's going to be gone soon. But we look to the things that we cannot see and will last forever. What can't we see? Well, we can't see eternal salvation yet. We can't see the rewards that are coming. We can't see the glory that's coming. We can't see the redemption that's coming. That's going to last forever. So right now, let me ask you a question. What are you looking at? What are you looking at? Are you looking at the things that are right in front of you on a daily basis? The pain, the stress, the family problems, the falling out with someone, a loss that you're suffering, sin that you're struggling with. What are you looking at? Or are you looking at the things that God has promised and he's already guaranteed for you? Eternal salvation, redemption, restoration, rewards, glory, peace, a joy that is undescribable and never ending. What are you looking at right now? Because whatever you're looking at is going to determine the direction that you go. I had a motorcycle for a number of years, and one of the first things that you learn when you're riding is that wherever you turn your head and look, that's the direction you're going to go. So if you're looking at all the stuff today, the mess that's in the world, the mess in our own individual lives, if that's what you're looking at, that's going to direct the course of your life, and it's not going to be good. It's going to be discouraging. It's going to feel unbearable. It's going to feel like it never ends. And that's how you give up. But if you say, forget all this stuff that's happening, it's real, I'm not just sticking my head in the sand, but I'm going to fix my eyes on the things that are coming, that it won't go away, that are eternal, even though I can't see them right now. And that's going to direct the course of your life. It's going to be a whole lot better, and you're going to get encouraged, you're going to be enduring, you're going to be a blessing to other people, you're going to be part of the multiplication. You're running towards glory, not the mess that we see in the world today. So what are you looking at right now? Here's the point. Our hope, all of our hope, is in the things that are eternal that have yet to come. Don't put your hope in things that happen here. Like if you put your hope in things that happen in this world, you are going to be thoroughly disappointed. Whether that's hope in the next political candidate, don't do that. Whether that's hope in the next social movement, not gonna find hope there. Whether that's hope in your spouse. Man, I love my wife, but I can't put my hope in her. She's not Jesus. She's a blessing to me, but she's not Jesus. If you put your hope in anything in this world, you're going to be disappointed. It might be next week, it might be 30 years from now. And how arrogant and ignorant is for anyone that's living today to think that, oh, now we figured it out. Forget thousands of years of human history. They got it wrong. We figured it out now. I've said this so many times before. There's nothing new under the sun. There's nothing progressive about the world at all. We just keep going in the same cycle over and over and over again. That was the series Paradise Lost that we did for 10 weeks. over and over again. We haven't figured it out because there's not any hope that we can find here. It's only in what comes next. It's only in Jesus. And Ecclesiastes talks about how we are all wired for eternity. Every person who's ever taken a breath on this planet, God has wired eternity into our hearts. That's why when you're younger, you think that you're invincible, that nothing's ever going to happen to you, that you're going to live forever, that nothing's going to change. It's because eternity's been wired into you. Now that's a skewed perspective of eternity, but we're all eternal beings. Everyone is going to have an eternity. It already started. It's going on right now. But there's two options. You get two choices. One choice is you get to spend eternity with God forever in his presence, enjoying him. And the second is you get to spend eternity separated from God's presence. One, you absolutely want. Please trust me on this. If this is the only thing you hear me say today, one, with God, you want that. The other, you want nothing to do with. We're all eternal beings. So think about this. Since we're eternal beings, the vast majority of your life is going to be lived after your death. Think about that for a second. Most of your life is going to be lived after you die. So imagine a dot. And this dot, it just represents everything that happens to you in this world. Your entire life, however long that is, the dot represents everything that happens in this life to you. Now imagine a line next to it with an arrow that goes on forever. It never stops. This line just keeps going and going and going. That line represents eternity. Now it's so easy for us to focus our perspective on the dot, the here and now, that's all we focus on is the temporary. But the line is where most of our lives are going to be lived. So shouldn't we be focused on that? Shouldn't our perspective be about the line, not the dot? Because if you're living on the line, then there's hope when the world seems hopeless. If you're living on the line, you will have peace when you're under pressure. When you're living on the line, man, you're living for eternal glory that is far greater than anything that will ever happen to you in the dot. So, live on the line, not in the dot. The dot's temporary. The line's for eternity. That's the perspective that we have to have. Man, I read this story about an English couple, and this story, man, it got me. I think it's so spot on. This English couple, they served God for 40 plus years in some far corner of the world. And when the 20th century came around, they decided, you know what? It's time for us to sail home. So they wrote all their financial supporters, they wrote all the churches that they were connected to over the years back in England and said, hey, we're finally coming home. So when they're sailing home and they see the coastline for the very first time on the horizon, the first time they've seen their home in decades, the man turns to his wife and he says, I wonder if anybody will be here to welcome us home. And as the ship pulled into the harbor, this couple, they're standing on top of this ocean liner and they're holding hands. And as they pull up to the dock, to their surprise and great pleasure, they just see these huge crowds of people standing there, pointing and cheering in their direction. There's even a band there playing, and there's this massive banner that says, welcome home, we're proud of you. And this couple is deeply moved by this, like as any of us would be. And they've got tears streaming down their face, and they're laughing, and they said, isn't this wonderful? And they kind of got carried away for a second, and they said, oh yeah, we got to go get our luggage. So they go below deck to get all their stuff, and they make their way to the gangplank. And when they get out onto the gangplank to walk out onto the dock, this anticipation of this welcome, like how many people are we going to get to see that we haven't seen in almost 50 years? What stories are we going to get to tell? What stories are we going to get to hear? Who are we going to get to hug? All the laughing as this anticipation builds for this welcome, it faded quickly because all of the people started to leave. And then it became obvious what happened. This welcome home wasn't for them. It was for some politician coming back from a foreign campaign. In fact, not a single person was there to welcome this couple home. And the man at that point, he couldn't hide his disappointment. He just dropped his head, settling. After a lifetime of service, this isn't much of a welcome home. And right at that moment, his wife, she put her arm through his. She said, come on, sweetheart. This is just England. We're not home yet. That's living on the line and not in the dot. That's encouragement in the middle of utter disappointments. That's what an eternal perspective gives you. So if you're following Jesus, hear me on this. No matter what you go through in life, no matter how huge it is, whatever storm or pressure or pain it is, even though it seems enormous and endless, remember this. You're not home yet. You're not home yet. And the welcome home that you are going to get is going to be so incredibly better than the welcome home that this couple thought that they were going to get in England. And it's also a welcome home that's never, ever going to end. So right now, maybe today's day one, July 4th, 2021, man, live on the line, not on the dot. All right? Let's go.